Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna do a live stream just sanding this sculpture that I've been working on, this female queen sculpture. There's a few places that I needed to finish up, so I have this sanding, it's like a from a disc sander, and I'll be doing that with water. This is 220 grit. That's probably as sanded as I'll go. You can kind of see the matte finish. That's what it'll look like. I should be working on something else. I should be editing videos, but I was having a hard time concentrating on that, so I decided I would try switching projects, and this is something I need to finish up for a upcoming show anyway, so I'm gonna try to get some work done on this. Let's see. I do have like a popsicle stick, and then there was, if I can find it, a little dowel. Where did I put it? And I'll just be using those as backings for sanding this sculpture. If you guys have questions, I might talk, I might not. Well, I guess it depends on how I feel. But if you have, oh, somebody says, finally caught one of these. Yeah, doing a live stream. I've been kind of sporadic with these, so. But if you guys have any questions, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you have any topics you'd like me to discuss, I'm happy to talk about anything. But for the most part, I'll just be trying to get rid of some of the tool marks that are on this. I've marked up with some construction crayons some of the areas that still need some work, but it is getting closer to finishing and seeing less and less tool marks, which is always encouraging, though it is just a lot of sanding that's required for finishing up a stone sculpture. And a lot of that is going to be done by hand, so let's go ahead and get into it. So there was a post, somebody did like a short or a reel, I think I saw it on Instagram, of like they showed some of the comments of people saying that they weren't real artists, that they were just like a craftsman, not a real artist, and this was another sculptor. And then he showed that. I'd like to, maybe I'll do a video about it just because it got me thinking, but he showed like these comments of people saying you're not a real artist. And then he's like, well, maybe I should try something new. And then it shows him kind of mimicking or copying some of the like modern art things where they're just doing, there's these art exhibits where people are just doing weird things. And then there's like a group of, 25 people just watching. And that's kind of modern art, something that people would call like avant-garde. This is art, and my comment, I commented and I said that something along the lines of art education today is more about teaching students how to justify bad art rather than the more difficult task of teaching them to create good art. And I really do think that is that is the case for art today. Yeah, somebody's saying, what is your opinion of modern art? I think that is what modern art is all about. I think modern art is based on a false premise. It's based on one of the most common sayings that there is about art. And that is something that we've all heard. We probably said at some point, and it has like a kernel of truth to it, and that is the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So that's something that everybody accepts as a universal truth, but and there's true parts to it. So there's the truth in it is that people have different tastes. So somebody likes figurative work, somebody else likes landscapes. People have different tastes. But the conclusion of that, if you take it to its conclusion, is that nothing is really any better or worse than anything else. That's the logical conclusion of beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Because who are you to tell an artist that their work isn't good? Like, who are you to tell somebody that just because their artwork looks like it was done by, an 8-year-old, that is any less of a work of art than somebody that has, spent their life mastering stone sculpture or, oil painting or whatever? Who's to say that the drawing that looks like, a crayon drawing on the wall is any better or worse than the, masterpiece by Michelangelo? And so that's kind of postmodernism. That's relativism. That's saying nothing's really any better or worse than anything else. And it doesn't nobody really believes that. So even the people that claim, even me, I've even probably said beauty's in the eye of the beholder with regard to some things, but I don't believe I don't believe that beauty is entirely in the eye of the beholder. I think that there are objective standards of beauty, and there are things that if you don't see them as beautiful, then there's something wrong with you. Like there's something disordered in you. Like if you look at a sunset, a sunset that's colorful, the sun is setting down, the clouds are beautiful, there's all this color, and you see that as something that's ugly or something that's not beautiful, you're wrong. Like there's something wrong, there's something disordered in you. And I think you can tell a lot about a society by looking at its art, looking at what it creates artistically. And somebody's saying, are you talking about the guy with the bucket of sand tower watching it fall over? I'm not sure that that's art. Yeah, that was one of the examples. So yeah, the guy in the video, he shows that as well as other things, people like whipping butter or something like that. Oh yeah, whipping, and then like just with a chain or something. And he shows, and then he shows him doing the same thing to his sculptures, which you can tell that these are sculptures that have taken hours and hours and years to master the forms. And he does animals and people and representative artwork. So, and he's very good at it. You could tell that he knows what he's doing. But then he kind of just juxtaposes the modern art, these things that are celebrated in the circles where people say, oh well, you're just not sophisticated enough to understand. That's kind of you just like haven't been educated on why this is why this is actually good, even though it looks like garbage. It looks like we're just like being ridiculous, but this is actually good art. And that's kind of I feel like that's the case with a lot of things nowadays. People are just they're not willing to trust their instincts. There's like a trust the experts kind of philosophy that has really gained a lot of ground. You saw this especially with like all the COVID stuff, where some people were just like, I don't know, like this seems kind of silly, like wearing 2 masks or things like that. Like there were some things that just seemed kind of off. But then people were like, well, you got to trust the experts. Like you got to trust the experts. And that was like the motto, like or what did they say? They would say, trust the science. And that's like a worldview that's really taken hold. And in artwork, it's like, oh, you got to trust the experts. These are people that, are work in the galleries and sell art, and they, are art historians, and they know so much about these works of art. And so if you disagree with them that, art is subjective and nothing's better or worse than anything else, and and these works of art, which are, I mean, let's be honest, they're ugly, and they're like poorly done. They don't show mastery of the craft. They don't show an understanding of form. They're just things that require very little effort, very little study or mastery, and then we're supposed to believe that because we're not an expert, we can't comment on that, or we can't say, actually, this is ridiculous. It's kind of like the emperor and his clothes, where, you know, everybody says, well, if you, the emperor has this new set of clothes, the story goes, and, you know, the people just scam him. They say, like, this is the finest clothes in the world, but if you're stupid, if you're a stupid person, if you're not intelligent, you can't see the clothes. And then the king doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't want to, and nobody wants to say anything, but then finally there's a little kid that says, why is the king walking around without clothes? The king doesn't have any clothes on. And then everybody realizes, oh yeah, like, this is, like, we were just fooled, because they were kind of like, well, if you speak out against it, you must be an idiot, or you must be uneducated, you must be unintelligent, because, like, we know so much about art and everything. So that is a worldview that I disagree with. I think that there is a subjective, there's a subjective element, meaning like a personal element, and that's internal to you, but then there are also objective measures on beauty. Like, we have a sense, just like our sense of, like our other senses, our sense of taste, our sense of smell. We have a sense of what is beautiful. We also have a moral sense, like a sense of what is true, what is right, what is wrong. We can look at complex moral situations, and we just kind of have a feeling, like a gut feeling of when something that's happening is wrong. And it's hard to articulate those things, which is why I think those that are highly educated, that have a lot of experience with learning a lot of big fancy words so that they can say, you know, very little with a large vocabulary, I think that's what gives them the upper hand, is for me to say, well, no, that artwork is just ugly. You know, they can say, well, you're just uneducated, or something like that. We just got to stop buying into that. Like, we got to trust our senses a little bit more, have some more common sense. I think that's a thing that people need. And then just support great works of art. And we could use less support for bad works of art. Let's see, somebody says, like when they paint a white canvas, different shades of white, it's hilariously pretentious. Yeah, yep. So that's kind of the modern thing. It's really the elevation of what is new above what is, like, it's only good if it's new. It's only good if it's like you're like the first one that's done it. And so novelty has become the measure of whether something is a good work of art. But the thing with novelty is most new things are terrible ideas. Like, most new ideas are terrible, because billions and billions of people have lived on this earth, and the ideas that were good usually catch on. Like, the good ideas, they usually catch on, and people say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I'll incorporate that into my worldview, into my, like, if it's about art, like, I'll incorporate those techniques into my artworks. So with good ideas, they catch on, so the chance that you will have a truly unique idea that is also good is just so small. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have new ideas or try new things. I think we should be doing that all the time. But most of artwork is a collaboration between those that have gone in the past, that have kind of that have come up with new things, and you take some from them, you take some from other people, you kind of put them together in a new, unique way. But you're building on a foundation that has already been established over millennia of people, you know, trying and trial and error. And if you can do that, you can really become great, especially with how much we have to learn from and build off of nowadays. You know, the information age, we have so much information. So what are we going to do with that? Let's see. Somebody else says, "I trust my nose. I trust my nose. Pull my finger." What? I don't know what that's referring to. Let's see. I like Vincent van Gogh, and my wife, who paints, doesn't. Yeah, yeah. And so Van Gogh. Yeah. So the thing with this is, just like there was a video where I talk about this a little bit more in detail, objectivity versus subjectivity in art. And the thing is that on the fringes, it becomes blurry. It's like a, it is like a spectrum. So in the real sense of the word, it is like a spectrum where there's great masterful works of art, and then there's terrible works of art, and it's easier to discern the opposite. So it's easier to discern that sculpture by Bernini is better than a banana duct taped to the wall. Like that's an extreme, and it's easy to say, okay, one is absolutely objectively better than the other. Like there's just no question. But then when you go into specific artists and try to argue the details, well, is this artist different than that artist? That is challenging. It is challenging to say, well, like who counts, who do we include, and who do we exclude from this this club of truly great artists throughout history. And I think that's a fun, interesting debate to have. But I think we've gone too far in the direction of basically anything goes. Everything's art. And when everything is art, that means nothing is. If everything is art, then art has no meaning. Because that means that art is a synonym for something. So it's like, is that art? Is it something? Well, yes. Well, then it's art. It's like, no. We have to have, there has to be a boundary within which we frame the picture. The picture has to reside within the frame, and the frame is the definition. And if we have no frame, if it's a frameless work of art that includes everything, then it's basically nothing, if that makes sense. If you have a definition that includes everything, then it's not a definition, because definitions exclude the things that do not represent the word or the concept that you're talking about. So there has to be some boundaries, and there's like a real push to just eliminate all boundaries and say, you know what, we don't need boundaries. We can, like, anything can be art, anything can be beautiful, anything can be a master work of art. And that worldview benefits the people that are uncommitted, not very talented, don't want to work very hard, but have a lot of either, but have built connections. So maybe that's connections through education, through being in the right circles, or through galleries, or whatever. Like people that have those connections with established people and people that have kind of bought into this philosophy, then they're able to find, they're able to make millions off of these, what they call works of art, but what I think are, if they're works of art, they're bad works of art. So even if we include it in the definition of art, then I think we can still say, well, there are some works of art that are bad works of art. And but that is an interesting topic of discussion. It's kind of a difficult, it's a difficult thing, because then if you say that there's objectivity, it's like, well, where does that objectivity come from? Does it come from evolution? Does it come from a creator? God, the God that created us, is that where it comes from? Or does it come from random, unguided, natural processes, evolutionary processes? And if it comes from just random processes, who's to say that that's like, that those processes should be valued as a moral truth over over just somebody that wants to blow up that framework and say, well, everything is relative. So that's kind of relativism. That's postmodernism. That's um, the the abandonment of traditional standards like atelier type standards that they used to have, and let's see. So he says, nature itself, like flower blooms, is art, in my opinion. Nature is art. Yeah. Well, certainly, those that believe that there's a creator, that the world was designed by an intelligent force, a creative force, then you can say that the world is literally a work of art, made by the hand of God. Those that don't believe that, well, then I think that even those people can recognize beauty, even if they just say, well, it's just a coincidence, or it's just a evolutionary kind of fluke that we see some things as beautiful or some things as, I don't know, healthy or productive, like behaviors, and other things as the opposite. But it is an interesting philosophy. I see where the framework comes from, because it's hard to justify any objectivity without appealing to a greater authority, an authority greater than mankind. And when you do that, you enter into the realm of religion, and that is a place where a lot of people are uncomfortable. So they'd rather say that there is no objectivity, that everything is subjective, morality, beauty, societal standards. These are all just subjective things that are invented. They're inventions of mankind, and therefore nobody is actually right. Nobody is actually correct. It's all just a matter of opinion. Everything is opinion. There's no true right or wrong. Got to go to finish my own artwork now. That Gunsmoke with all the what is that? Now that Gunsmoke has with off. Catch you later. I don't know if I understand the last part, but yeah, we'll see you later, and I hope you create something great and beautiful. And that was making do. They commented, let's see, that they're going to go create their own work of art, which I definitely support. Try to create more than you consume, which I'm struggling with. I was really having a hard time getting motivated to start working. I should actually be working on editing, video editing, filming another video lesson for the hand sculpting course, which is out now over at Proco.com. The new videos are released weekly until we release all the videos, and then those videos are up permanently. It's just we just release them 1 week at a time, so students have time to do the assignments and stuff. But I should be working on that, but I was really having a hard time motivating myself, so I decided, well, I'll do something kind of mindless like sanding, and that at least will get me closer to finishing this stone sculpture that I'm working on. But yeah, it is an interesting topic, modern art. But then, so then I have that opinion that there is objectivity in art, but then I enjoy abstract art. So this is an abstraction. This is kind of an abstract sculpture, abstracted. So I do believe that there are ways to do abstraction that are more interesting, that are more beautiful, and ways to do abstraction that are just an excuse because you can't represent things naturalistically. So I am aware of that, and I'm aware that abstraction is, well, it's easier in some ways, but it's still difficult to do it well. Hey Rachel, how you doing?
Good.
Good? I'm just doing a live stream.
Oh.
I'm doing a video.
Oh.
Do you want to see the sculpture?
Yes.
It's up here. I'm sanding. Do you want to sand a little bit?
Yes.
You want to sand?
Wow.
Yeah. Do you need to change your diaper?
Yes.
Okay. Sand a little bit like this.
Water.
Yeah, with some water. The water helps with the sanding.
Yeah.
Boop. Sand, sand, sand. Okay, go ask Mom. Okay?
Okay.
I love you.
I love you. Water.
Okay, go ahead and close the door, okay? Let's see. Let me get a stool. You can see this from another angle. Were you always a sculptor or did you draw too? I didn't really get into sculpting until college. Um, but I've always liked drawing. So I liked drawing and painting. But then in college, I saw a figurative sculpture. I think it was by Jason Millward, who's a sculptor. He's a friend and sculptor I really look up to. Great. I've learned a lot from him. A lot from him. He's the one who taught me how to make wire armatures, the method that I use for making wire armatures. So if you're familiar with that method, he's the one who showed me. I don't know how much of it he came up with, but he passed that on to me. And I saw a sculpture, and then I decided, you know what, I'd like to do something like that. It was a figure sculpture, a female figure that they'd done from a live model. So then, the next semester I took the class. It was on figure sculpting, and I just really loved it. I just loved working with 3D, felt like I really connected with it. And I decided that I would try to make art and sculpting work as a major. So I switched from pre-physical therapy. I was going to be a physical therapist. I switched to art and got my BFA in sculpture. And still trying to make it work. So, somebody says, well, you're still sculpting after college, and that's pretty much the measure of success. I would say that, there's a couple other a couple other measures, but I guess if that's the measure, then I am successful as an artist. I'm still doing art after college, and I make my income from that, even though it's not a spectacular income as of yet. Though I'm always open to that changing. Let's see. Somebody says, "Have you ever done any superhero sculpts?" I have. I did Venom sculpture a while back, but it's been a while. It's been a while. I think I'm more interested. Somebody had the idea of going back and doing like Bible characters. I think that would be a cool idea, doing like some warrior type, like Samson or something, some other Bible characters. I think I like that that idea, just because superheroes, I feel like are we've been getting so much superheroes, and it's somebody else's intellectual property that you're kind of borrowing from, which I think is also, I mean, it's fine, but it doesn't excite me that much. Though it's probably more marketable than the other stuff, or certainly more marketable than Bible. Well, I guess it depends on what audience you have, but it's also you have to be has to be something you're interested in, or else it does become very difficult very quickly to create, to use those creative juices. If it's something you're not interested in, it can wear you out pretty fast. Though I'm not, if somebody wanted a superhero sculpture, commissioned a unique superhero sculpture, I would not be against that at all. I just, and maybe, I might done, like I said, I've done like Venom and some other hero type poses. And one of my favorite art books is Cutting Edge Anatomy, which is kind of an art book for comic book artists. And that's one of my favorites, and I really like the style in that book. That book was really influential to me, and I've done some sculptures from using those drawings as a reference. I've done some studies with that. But those aren't specific superheroes. They're just kind of generic superhero-esque figures, kind of like bodybuilder type athletic figures. I like how superhero sculptor create a sculpt so fast. Yeah, well, I don't know if any sculpture I've done was ever fast. Well, I guess I do quick gesture studies, but sculpture is kind of like it's like the marathon of art, because it takes a lot more time to develop. You're just working in 3D, and sometimes, like in this case, you're working with a hard material like stone or something else, and so it does take quite a bit of time. Let's see. I'm going to lay this down, so let me just change the angle a little bit so that I can work on the back. Somebody says, how much harder is it to carve stone rather than sculpt clay? Well, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. But even with the stone sculptors of the past, the great ones, they sculpted a model in clay. They would do that first, and then they would transfer it to stone. So you still have to know, no matter what, you need to learn to sculpt clay. Well, for traditional sculpting, maybe not if you're working in 3D. But it is a lot harder because of a couple of things. For one, you're removing material. So with clay, you can add or remove. You kind of have that freedom to change it however. And with stone, you can't really add it back. Well, you can, kind of, like this corner right here. I've epoxied back in. I don't know if you can see. But it's not with a busy stone like this, you can kind of get away with adding stone, and this was kind of just to see how it would look, and I thought it was fine, and so you can do those things. But in general, you can't really put things back, and so if you make a mistake, you either have to start the sculpture over, or the sculpture just has to become smaller. So, yeah, stone is definitely, and stone just takes so much time to finish. But then, once you're finished, if it's like a nice stone, a nice marble, or even this limestone, which is, it's not like well, limestone's nice, but this is not really a stone that was intended for sculptors. It's just one that I had in the yard and I wanted to test out. And I've liked it. Like, I think even this stone, which is just kind of an average rock, it just looked like a rock like any other you'd see, kind of a light white looking rock, and the finish with stone is just so nice, and it's got weight to it. I just feel like it's easier to justify asking a higher price on these types of sculptures, just because of the weight that they have, the presence. So I love the stone finish. How long before you actually started liking your sculptures? I enjoy the process immensely, but my end results look like something my son could do accidentally. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. How long? Well, I still don't like my sculptures sometimes. Like, sometimes I still struggle with, creating a well-done sculpture. I've done several. I helped start the Figure Sculptors United, which does sculpting competitions. That was over in Utah. And we did lots of competitions, and I never won. And I just felt, I think there was once where I could have maybe justified winning, because I think there was one time where my sculpture looked the most like the model, so if that's what you were going off. But that's not what the judges cared about for that particular event. So so there was once when I feel like I maybe should have won, but for the most part, there were just better sculptors, and so I'm just always trying to get a little bit better, and you just go through that. But if you're discouraged, that's actually a good thing, because it means that your taste is getting better. Your sense of what looks good is being sharpened, and that comes before the skill to do it. So I'd say don't get discouraged. Realize that it's just a sign of progress. Your tastes are getting better. You're starting to have a better sense of when things are working, when they're not. And then I just say go back to basics. Like, break things down. Start with the primary forms. Make sure your primary forms are good, that they're proportional, that they're the structure of the sculpture is right. All of that stuff. Then go to the secondary forms, things like anatomy. So much easier to build the anatomy if you have a strong foundation of the primary forms simplified. So that's things like, the rib cage is like an egg shape, and a simplified version of the head. Those are the primary forms. And then finally you can worry about the details. But if you do it like that and you make sure you get the beginning steps correct, then it's a lot more manageable. So I'd say keep at it. Somebody says, yeah, but aren't the imperfections make it more human? Don't the imperfections make it more human? I think it is a part of it, especially now in the age of AI art. But it's not, it's not always. I think it's not about imperfections. It's about conscious choice, and your artwork shouldn't be the way it is because of the imperfections. It should be the way that it is because you choose to make it that way. So if you choose to do things abstract or to make the torso, like short and the legs really long, or if you have like some stylistic element of making the figures really skinny or whatever it is, like that should be a choice. It shouldn't be because you were trying to do it accurately, but then you just messed up. I think when those are conscious choices, then they look better. People can tell. You kind of have a sense of it. So I'm cautious of anybody that tries to justify their poor technique on the basis that that's just their style. It's like my style is just like not understanding how the human form is. That's my style. And it's like, well, that's not really a style. That's just like a lack of experience, a lack of understanding of the figure. And that's fine. Like everybody has to start there. Everybody starts as a novice. Even the great sculptors. I think Michelangelo famously, I believe, I don't know if this is true, but I believe he destroyed a lot of his early work because he says, I don't want anybody to know how hard I had to work to get as good as I am. Something along those lines, where he's like, if people knew how hard I had to work to get where I am, they wouldn't be impressed. So he didn't want people to see, the bad work that he'd done, and then to not be impressed because they're like, oh yeah, well, if you've done 10,000 sculptures, then eventually you're going to have one that looks good. It's like, well, or if you've done whatever it is, 1,000 or whatever. So I'd say it's not about imperfections. It's about conscious choice. This is a stone. Yeah, this is limestone. So this is limestone from the yard. From my yard and my house. I think it's just landscaping limestone, but there was a few of these. I had some granite, but I don't have the tools for granite. So I just did this to test it out, and now I have a couple more pieces of this stone I want to do some other pieces with, but for now, I don't know how many pieces I'll be able to finish before the show. The show is in August, so it's coming right up. I gotta finish this. I have the base, the black base. In fact, I can show you guys that. Let's see, where did I put that? Oh, it's over there. Yeah, let me show you, because it's exciting. Got a new base for this sculpture. So this is the base, black granite base that I need to drill it, and I need to drill the sculpture, and I'll show you guys that. Once I finish this sculpture, I'll try to do a video on my channel of the process and kind of condense that into a short-ish video so that you guys can see how it went from a design to a finished stone sculpture and the tools I use and all of that fun stuff. A lot of them aren't that expensive. I think the most expensive thing is like the angle grinder I use and the blade. But once you have that, it just adds up, I use angle grinder for a lot of the work, and then some burrs and just some other things. So he says, I will definitely note that when I'm doing a sculpture or drawing. He says that looks nice. Damn, that looks nice. Somebody says, well, thank you. I appreciate it. What tools are you using to carve, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah, so I use a angle grinder, like a 5-inch angle grinder that's a variable speed. I have a Makita, but any brand, if it works and it's a variable speed angle grinder, that's what I would invest in. And then I have some, like a cutting and grinding blade, so it has diamonds that are on the edge and then also on the front surface, so that I can cut with it. I can make cuts, but then also I can use that front flat surface to carve and to kind of shape things. That's mostly what I use to try to capture most of the form on these, especially the abstract sculptures. If you're doing realism, like naturalistic, realistic sculptures, then I think chisels are a better way to go than angle grinders. I just find that angle grinders and those tools are better for these abstract designs with these, this line work that I've kind of gotten. I kind of am comfortable with my stonework. I like this type of design, so that's what I use. But I do want to get into stone. But for stone, I would probably recommend some sort of pneumatic chisels or something like that. But I haven't even invested in that yet, so that's something that's coming. So an angle grinder, and then I also got, with that angle grinder, I got some sanding discs. So they go from 50 grit all the way up to like 3,000 or something. So you can pretty much polish the stone with those. And then whatever you can't get with those, you do by hand. So a lot of the finishing work I have to do by hand, just to make it uniform and everything that looks good. Let's see, got a couple more questions. I heard two different things. One, it's better to sculpt big for beginners if you want to sculpt in 1/8 scale. And second, if I want to sculpt in 1/8 scale, it's better to practice in 1/8. Let's see. So is it better to sculpt big or sculpt small? I think it is. Well, there's benefits to working either way. There is, like in the portrait sculpting course, there is an assignment where I have students sculpt the facial features twice life size as one of the premium assignments, and I demo how to do that. And the benefit of working large is that it really helps you to understand the form a little bit better. It's a little bit easier to grasp when you're blowing the nose up. You can kind of focus more on the inside of the nostrils and those types of things. Then you just get a better sense of what you're representing. So I'd say it's good to practice, at least sometimes it's good to practice large. But then, if you're going to be working in a certain scale, then working in that scale is, that's how you're going to get better at it. So I think that I can see the logic of both of those. But I'd say, try both. Work in the 1/8 scale more, but every once in a while, if there's a part of the body that you struggle with, do it like twice life size. Or if it's like the full figure, maybe not twice life size, but do some larger studies, maybe 1/4 life size figures or something like that every once in a while to try to get better at the areas where you struggle. So yeah, that's what I would say to those. Let's see. Okay, I don't want to. Do you want to try hand chiseling stone in the future, or are you uncertain of it? No, I do want to, and I want to get into more realistic sculptures, just like my clay sculptures. The only reason that I haven't is just I've been, busy with the courses and just doing other things, and so my focus has been primarily in other places. But I definitely want to get more into a more representative style of sculpting in stone, because that is, I think it's one of, if not the most impressive things an artist can do is convincingly represent, the flesh, or, especially like, there's an area where, somebody's holding, and you can just it just feels like flesh, or it feels like cloth, but it's in stone. I think there's very few things that are more impressive than that, and so I would like to take on that challenge, even though it's definitely a challenge. And my first several stone sculptures that are more representative will probably not be very good. So I have to be willing to kind of realize, oh, there's a learning curve with this. Even though I have experience with clay, I still have to kind of get worse for a little bit, and then after just a little bit, then you start to get better. So whenever you're learning something new, that's always what happens, is you get a little bit worse as you're trying to incorporate a new technique into your work, and then your work gets better after a little while. So somebody says, I like the amount of texture. The stone is amazing. Yeah, this is a nice stone. So you can see where it's wet. If I was to polish it, that's what it would look like, but I'm leaving it a little bit matte because I think when it's wet, or if you polish it, it looks a little bit plastic, I feel like, and I don't want it to feel plastic. I like the more matte, natural look of 220 grit wet sanding, so that's what I'm going to go with. Flesh or cloth in stone is always amazing to me. Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's why I like those things. Let's see. Your sculpture looks great. When do you apply the varnish to your stone? When it's done? Yeah, once it's finished, I'll apply like a stone seal. I think it's called like I think it's a breathable stone seal. I can't remember the brand of it, but yeah, it's just something. I'll probably use the color enhancing. So there's one that's a color enhancing seal, and it's good for if you want the stone to look a little bit more like the damp look, but it won't be shiny, but it'll just be kind of that more colorful look. And that's one I'll go with, and hopefully it'll look great. That's hope. And then I'll mount it on the base and see how that looks. Do you ever paint your sculptures? I haven't really gotten into painting my sculptures yet, but I'm not totally against the idea if it's the right material. So maybe, painting let's say you do like large pieces in resin and then painting them to look more like bronze. That's something that I've seen some people do to great effect, and they look really nice. So that's something I'm not against. I just haven't done it yet. A lot of the times I'd just as soon leave them in their original material, just because I feel like that's maybe more honest. Depending on. Not that you're being dishonest if you're painting your sculptures, but like if I was to do, but I'm not beyond it. Like I've thought about doing, probably what I'd rather do rather than paint is cast in resin mixed with stone or mixed with sand or other things, so that it's like a stone resin, and just getting that somewhere that looks nice. I think I'd do that. I'd prefer to do that before painting a sculpture. But the ancient sculptors, I think there's evidence that they did actually paint their sculptures, which is weird. We think of these ancient sculptors of always doing white marble, but a lot of them were painted originally, which I think would just detract from the beauty of the forms. I think that would be so distracting to have them painted, but I guess that's what they originally did. Somebody says, when do you get comfortable with the granite or different stone? Do you think you'll incorporate different stone with said piece? Like, let's say a woman made from limestone with granite slash marble dress. Oh, like trying different stones together. Yeah, that's something that I've played around with just a little bit. I've kind of come up with some concepts that I'd like to try out for sculpting, but I haven't done a ton of it. But there's some sculptors like Miles Howell. He does that with his abstract sculptures, and his forms are really, they're abstract, but they're really interesting. They're based on, he likes to study the bones of the body and bones of animals, and then he bases his abstract forms off of those. And so even though it's abstract, it's got an organic feel to it. Really interesting. Miles Howell is his name, and he does that a lot. Well, he'll take two pieces of stone and laminate them so that there's like a black with a white or other types of stone. Usually, if I was going to do something like that, it would probably be two similar types of stone. So like maybe a limestone with a marble wouldn't be that different. But if you do granite with marble, then finishing the surfaces so that they match, if you laminate them, can be difficult. If you're doing something like the dress, like you mentioned, then maybe it's a little bit easier. You just have to make sure that those, the areas where they connect are like perfectly flat. And then you probably have to drill into each side and then put a metal pin and epoxy and then put it together in such a way that it's really gonna stay together. But yeah, I'm not against that idea. That's a fun idea. I've thought about it before, but I don't think I've done any pieces like that as of yet. But something like a ballerina, or I like ballerinas. They're impressive and kind of an artwork or it's its own artwork. It's its own form of art, and so I like the elegance and beauty of the female form when they are disciplined and do those difficult dances, take years to master and become good at. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to, well, let's do the back a little bit more because I bet the back still has some scratches that need to be worked out. Something that I've thought about doing, and I mentioned this in a previous live stream, was doing like a monthly pose, like a new pose each month, and then doing some live streams based on that pose, and then having some sculpture kits for those that are interested in like in some sort of subscription based model where you can get a new wire armature and stand, and the materials are all provided, and then you can sculpt along with me and do some stuff like that. I've seen some other YouTubers do similar things, but I don't know if there'd be enough people to make it worthwhile. But that might be something fun that I'll try once I finish up with some of the show and the hand sculpting course and other things that I'm working on. I'd like to see if people would be interested in that. Maybe a competition element, so maybe every time there's like some sort of cash prize for the person that does the best version of that month's pose, so that there's some sort of incentive. I like competition type stuff. I feel like it pushes people. So that's something that might be coming up. We'll see. Let's see. Somebody says, do you have more stone sculptures you've made that we can see? Yeah, I do. In fact, I can grab some. Let me zoom out a little bit. And somebody says, ooh, that would be interesting. Yeah, I'd like to do that kind of, that type of competition. Let me make sure it's in focus, and then I'll grab some. There's actually, let's see, I don't know if you can see, but I actually have this corner back here has shelves. Let me grab. Oh, so here's I was talking about the larger than life stone sculptures. So there's one, there's the eye study. That was a fun sculpture. Here's a abstracted, let's see, an abstract female figure that was done in Utah marble. So this is white Utah marble, and then on a wood base, so you can kind of see the figure. I see these as like gesture studies. So you're just taking a pose and trying to bring it down to its essence, you know, the curves of the hips and the torso, the curve of the spine, and then you just basically have fun with the features, look for some line work, and just kind of be creative with it. So they're abstract, they're abstractions, but I try to do it in a way where I'm studying the figure, I'm inspired by the human form, and so that's one that I thought was kind of fun. Let's see, here's another one that's based on the male torso, also just kind of simple. Just a male torso simplified into a gesture study. So the chest would be right here, the head would be somewhere over here, and the arms there. Yeah, those are fun. Yeah, I actually have to take out all my stone sculptures and see how many I have to make sure I have enough for the show. Somebody says they look awesome. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. They're just kind of, they're fun. I see them as gesture studies, so I don't see them as like realistic figures. They're just studies. And that way I can justify them not being realistic. I just say, oh, it's just a gesture study, like the gestures you do on, you know, sketching. Somebody says they look awesome. Thank you. Nice. Have you ever heard of Jago? Jago. He's a self-taught stone carver, and I'd suggest you check him out if you haven't. I have not heard of him. Jago, is that how it's pronounced? I have not heard of him, so thank you for suggesting it. I'll have to look him up. Okay, I think I'm going to take a break there. I was able to make some more progress. What I'll do now is I'll wipe the sculpture down, get off this stone dust, and then I'll be able to see the scratches that are still present. Looks like there's still some up here, and yeah, and then it's going to be another couple sanding sessions probably, but it is getting closer, so that's encouraging. Let's stand that up and see what that looks like. Zoom out a little bit. So here's what it's looking like at this stage. Thank you guys for watching. If you're interested, please check out the links in the description for my sculpting courses. That's how I feed my family, so I appreciate anybody that helps support in that way. I also have a Patreon and an ebook, the Artist's X-Ray Vision, or an Artist's X-Ray Vision, the male figure and the female figure. Those are just $10, and those ebooks are, I think, great resources if you're interested in figurative art. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.